Hey everyone, thank you so much for stopping back by my channel. If you're new, please consider subscribing and leaving a comment and letting me know what you think about this topic. And if you are returning, I thank you so much for coming back. Now, you guys, I had to get back on this Old Testament thing, okay? Because a commenter, I hope you don't mind me mentioning your name, Alberti, I think is how you say it, mentioned Numbers chapter 31. I read that. Thank you so much for the comment, by the way. When I read it, I realized how foolish it was to believe all of that. Numbers chapter 31 talks about when God or Jehovah sent the Israelites through Moses to go and kill the Midianites, because apparently the Midianites incited his people to sin by worshiping their false gods or sacrificing to their false gods. Now, first of all, let me just stop right there. Nobody can make you do anything you don't want to do, right? Chapter 25 of Numbers talks about this particular incident when the Midianites apparently coerced Israel into worshiping false gods. It basically says that the women invited them to the sacrifices of their gods, and the Israelites came and sacrificed with them. That doesn't sound like they put guns up to their heads. I know they didn't have guns back then, but you know what I mean. They did not force these people to go and sacrifice to their gods. The Israelites apparently did it willingly, right? So this is what makes this whole thing so crazy. But let's go back to Numbers 31, because it really is very, I don't even know, mind-boggling how we just seen all this and didn't really cringe. Or maybe we did, but we just had no choice but to accept it. Anyway, Numbers chapter 31. Jehovah apparently sends Moses, or has Moses, pick out men for the battle. 1,000 from each tribe. So 12,000 people sent into battle into the Midianites to kill them, right? To kill basically the males and to bring the women back as plunder. Women and cattle, livestock, all that good stuff, right? But what happens is that Moses gets upset. In verse 15, he's upset when he sees the people coming back with the women, because he's like, did you leave all the women alive? Aren't you aware that these are the same women that incited Israel to sin against God? So go back, find out which of these women actually had relations with the man, and kill them. But you may preserve alive all of the virgins. In total, there were 32,000 virgins. So I'm wondering how many women total there were, right? That's crazy. So this brings up some questions. What does it matter whether they were virgins or not when it comes to them inciting to worship their gods? At this point, all the men had been killed, all the Midianite men, and all of these women were brought into the Israelite camp, right? How could they do anything while they're surrounded by Israelites and all of this worship to Jehovah at this point? They don't have access to their stuff anymore. They're not in their lands anymore. How could they incite Israel to now worship false gods when they're captured, basically? They're prisoners of war at that point. Furthermore, what does being a virgin or not have to do with anything? This is the main thing, though, that really should make you cringe. The commenter that brought this to my attention talked about how in order for them to find out who had been with the man, they obviously had to examine them. I mean, think about it. Even in our day, how do doctors know if somebody is a virgin or not? You can't tell by looking at a person's face, right? And we can't really imagine that the nation, the Israelite men, would have just asked them verbally, "Are you a virgin? Are you a virgin? What about you? What about you?" Really? No, that doesn't even make any sense. Because if the women seen that the virgins are the only ones staying alive, of course they would say that they were a virgin. You know what I mean? So it was so amazing that this commenter brought this up, because it was just so crazy that I never thought about that. And when you actually consider that, you guys, that is completely sick. That is sick. Think about it. They had to actually examine these women. And it says ultimately there were 32,000 virgins. So they would actually check them out down there. And if they were not intact, they would have to kill them. Does this sound like normal mentality? I'm sorry, but the mentality of these people sounded savage. Oh, wait, they weren't doing this on their own. They were doing this because they were apparently told by their God to do this. But yet, this is supposed to be a God of love, right? Come on. That doesn't make any sense. That does not make any sense at all. There is no way to actually justify this. There's no way. And then what were they doing with the virgins? That's another question you have to ask yourself. What would the men, these grown men, be doing with these virgins? We already know our minds can go, in different directions when it comes to that. I don't necessarily need to say it. But generally speaking, the ones who would be virgins would be young, right? Young girls. We can't imagine, or we can't keep thinking that this was God. It's only if you use your logic, if you use your God-given logic, it doesn't make sense that this would be God's behavior. Again, as I mentioned before in previous videos, if God was okay with all of this stuff, why are there laws against child, like pornography and child sacrifice and slavery and murder and all of these different things that we see happening so casually in the Old Testament? Why is God now putting in place governments that actually regulate these things to say that they're not okay? I'd love to hear, now that I'm gone and now that I see these things clearly, I'd love to hear a witness take on this. I'd love to hear you say why this is justified, why this would be okay. It's time to wake up. We've been asleep for much too long. We have been asleep. We have let the idea of this Bible actually being God's inspired word, keep us dumbed down and keep us from being logical. Okay? I know some of you might still think that it's God's word, but that's a story for another day. Do some research on the Bible. Do some research on it. Do some research on where it came from. You can't just keep buying into what you were raised to believe. Even if you weren't raised a witness, you could have been raised as a Christian. You were raised to think that the Bible was inspired by God. Either way it goes. And then you could have come into being a Jehovah's Witness later on, perhaps. But still, the foundation of all of it is the Bible. You got to start looking at the Bible for what it is. It doesn't make any sense. A lot of it. A lot of it does not make any sense. And we have to stop making excuses for the behavior of this God that it's referring to here. So, thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you on my next video. Take care, you guys.